Everlastingness and paradise are there, and not here. Do you wish to stay young, healthy, rich, and immortal? If you desire these things, you will not find them in this world. However, you can find them in the hereafter. Allah the Exalted has decreed misery and impermanence for this world. He called this life a trifle and an enjoyment of deception. There is a well-known poet from long ago who, for the greater part of his life, lived a life of penury. In the prime of his youth, he wanted money and could not get it. He wanted a wife too, but he failed in that pursuit as well. When he became old, with white hair and brittle bones, he became rich. Many women were now willing to marry him, and he lived a comfortable life. The irony of his story is that he was poor when he was able to enjoy all comforts, and that he became rich when he could no longer enjoy the pleasures of life. He composed these verses in the latter part of his life. When I desired to own, when I was only 20, came into my possession after turning 80. Young Turkish girls now surround me, singing and wearing silks and jewels. They say, your moans keep us awake all night long. So what is it that you complain of? I said, of being an octogenarian. Did we not give you lives long enough so that whosoever would receive admonition could receive it? And the warner came to you, and they thought that they would never return to us. And this life of the world is only amusement and play. The example of this world is that of a rider who seeks shade under a tree to rest for a short period of time, and then he gets up and leaves. Enemies of the divine way. As I was reading material written by proponents of atheism, it became clear to me that those writers blatantly showed enmity towards the principles of the true religion. From what I read from those writers and from what I perceived in terms of their ill manners and lack of humility, I feel shy even to relate what they said and wrote. Suffice it to say, I realized that a person who does not have principles and who does not attribute a correct meaning to life becomes transformed into an animal possessing only the shape and appearance of a man. Or do you think that most of them here understand? They are only like cattle. Nay, they are even further astray from the path, even worse than cattle. I ask myself, how is it possible for them to be happy despite their having turned away from Allah, who owns happiness and gives it to whomsoever he pleases? How could they be happy after having severed the road between them and after having shut the doors of Allah's vast mercy upon their own weak selves? How could they find happiness and comfort after having earned his anger and after having waged war upon him? I grasp that the first punishment they receive is one that is inflicted upon them in this life as an introduction or prelude to the greater punishment. That is, if they fail to repent of the hereafter. This harbinger of punishment includes misery, general apathy, a feeling of being constricted, and a sense of hopelessness. But whosoever turns away from my reminder neither believes in this Quran nor acts on its orders. Verily, for him is a life of hardship. Many people who are from this category wish that their life would end. Some common factors between atheists of old and present-day atheists are a lack of appropriate manners with Allah, an arbitrary approach to deciding upon values and principles, and a lack of knowledge, or a feigned lack of knowledge of the evil end results of their actions. In addition, they share a general lack of care for what they say, do, or write. Is it then he who laid the foundation of his building on piety to Allah and his good pleasure better, or he who laid the foundation of his building on an undetermined brink of a precipice ready to crumble down, so that it crumbled to pieces with him into the fire of hell? And Allah guides not the people who are zalimun, cruel, violent, proud, polytheists, and wrongdoers. The only solution available to these staunch atheists is they wish to depart from their worries and problems, is if they don't repent and follow true guidance, to commit suicide and thus end their bitter and lowly existence. Say, perish in your rage and kill yourselves. That will be better for you. The reality of this life, one will be happy to the degree that one remembers Allah and recites his book, and after considering this principle, one may estimate his worth in this world and in the hereafter. And were it not that all mankind would have become of one community, all disbelievers, desiring worldly life only, we would have provided for those who disbelieve in the most beneficent. Allah silver roofs for their houses and elevators and stairways of silver, whereby they ascend, and for their houses doors of silver and thrones of silver on which they could recline, and adornments of gold. Yet all this, the roofs, doors, stairs, elevators, thrones of their houses, would have been nothing but an enjoyment of this world, and the hereafter with your Lord is only for the pious and righteous persons who fear Allah much. These verses proclaim in clear terms the temporary, therefore insignificant, worth of material possessions and social status. We should realize that this life is not the yardstick of success. When we see that the disbeliever often lives a life of opulence, while the believer is often precluded from many worldly pleasures, a phenomenon that merely indicates the paltry value of this world. While giving a sermon on a Friday, may Allah be pleased with them, a well-known companion of the Prophet was reminiscing out loud about what the days were like when he lived with the Prophet. Uqba would fight with him in the way of Allah, and to avoid starvation he would eat with him the leaves of a tree. Yet he remembered those days to be the happiest of his life, and he recalled how he departed from the Prophet, becoming a governor of a province. And despite this rise in worldly status, he felt wonder at how much lower the true quality of life became after the death of the Prophet. After the death of the Prophet, felt bewildered and confused when he became governor of Kufa. During the Prophet's lifetime, he too would eat tree leaves or the skin of a carcass. He could not bear the castles of his new life after having tasted the pleasure of his old one in the company of the Prophet.